So winter is finally upon us again, which for a lot of people generally means more time indoors, and more time indoors means more time painting, generally. But there are times when I approach my painting bench with a sense of dread, because no matter how hard I try and no matter how many years I've been painting, my miniature painting never seems to get any better. Well, not me, because I love painting and I never dread it, but you, maybe you. And I have been painting miniatures for about 6 years now, and it is my job, and it is where I also get my quiet zen time. But through the course of that very small 6 years, there was a time where, I felt the existential dread of my painting was stagnating. Yeah, despite it being one of those super fun hobbies, it's also one of those super fun hobbies that has the baggage of external pressure, where we feel we always need to be better at painting, we always need to do better at the thing we enjoy. So let's talk about it. The first and most important thing to remember is that you are your own harshest critic, where you will look at a model and see hours and hours of work attributed to painting volumes or the trim on a miniature's belt buckle or whatever, but no one else actually sees the individual parts that way. And this is a common thing when people look in a mirror. It is easy to overanalyze individual things that you don't like about yourself. There's a wrinkle there or a crooked lip there. But in reality, other people see you as a whole, not the component parts. And it is the same for your miniatures. You see the individual problems, people see the overall piece. Like these Halo Flashpoint miniatures that I painted in like 2 hours. I see a load of things wrong with what I did, even though it was 2 hours, but everyone who I've played a game with, and there are about 30 games of those so far, has said that they look great, and maybe they do. But that is because I'm sat here just overanalyzing them and factoring in that I know exactly what I did to make them and how long it took. So really, before we get into any of the actual tips, just be sure to go a little bit easier on yourself, I think, when thinking about these things. Okay, let's try and be a little bit more practical and less fluffy with it. So tip number 1 is to focus on a specific area. Now, painting miniatures overall consistently to a great standard is pretty hard. And you may think, well, no, it's not hard. In which case, fuck you, this video isn't probably for you. However, just turn the sound down and let it play out, because I do need the ad revenue in the run up to Christmas. But a lot of the models we paint from our super best friends over at Wayne's Workshop, they have lots and lots of areas of interesting stuff going on. And it's kind of all put together. So there's highly concentrated areas of detail and character, and I suppose narrative to a degree, on most of the newer models that we paint, which means you can spend a lot of time on one thing, and you can spend a hell of a lot of time trying to do all the things really well. For instance, this cloak on this ultramarine dude could be a project all by itself for you. And his armor is pretty interesting, plenty of stuff going on there, and that, is a project by itself for you. The skin and flesh tones on this He-Man are also a project within themselves, or at least they were for me. And what I mean by this, for example, with this He-Man, is I spent most of my time and energy on his skin tones. So say, like with this He-Man model, I had 3 hours to do it. 2 of those hours in this case, I remember, were spent just on the skin tones. And the rest was kind of just contrast paint with a little bit of dry brushing, I think. After 3 hours, I have a nicely painted model, and I've learned a lot more about skin tones in that process, or that specific skin tone, than I would if I tried to paint the entire thing to a great standard with the time I had available. For me, I like to pick what the most important part of the model is and focus on that and learn how to do that, or just practice at it. And that's not the most important part dictated by the model or the design of it. And that's the most important part to me at that time. Maybe you can tell, but this He-Man, the single miniature, had way more focus applied to just the skin tones, and it took about the same amount of time as this He-Man and Battle Cat in total, and to me, the standalone figure does look better.
Come on down to the Squarespace website and Emporium. What's up, guys? Tony D here, turning tricks and making quips, and I'm here to talk to you today about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, what I need is a website all about me? Sure I do. I'm an egomaniac all the time. Well, now you can with Squarespace's browser-based web designer that's easy to use and comes preloaded with an unsettling amount of templates from award-winning designers just to get you started. Along with that, the templates cover blogs, guestbooks. Are guestbooks still a thing? Online stores. Portfolio. And speaking of online stores, if you've ever wanted to do business like the pros and have your own online store, well, now you can, with no commission or skim from the provider. Along with that, you can also add your store's existing EPOS system to the site to have your inventory ready to go. And of course, we got to mention that domain acquisition tab, guys. Oh, it's my favorite part. Tony's favorite thing ever. Want a name for your website? Sure. Head on over to this tab, type in the domain and the name you want to go for, and immediately connect it to the name and the name and the stuff and the rest of the world. And it's just that easy, guys. It's just that easy. So come on down to squarespace.com/MSPaints and use the code MSPaints at checkout to save yourself 10% off your first WhatsApp subscription or domain. All right, bene.
Suggestion number 2 is to not be hindered by a need for consistency. Richard Wagner once said, "Consistency in one's writing is the first step on the road to stagnation." He didn't actually say that, but what he did actually say was never look at the trombone players, it only encourages them. And that is probably my favorite quote of anything to do with music ever. But if you had said the first quote would still be very important, and despite him not saying it, it is still quite important. Trying to be consistent across a large army project or something like that is kind of going to give you those stagnation vibes. Say, for instance, if you're painting 30 Tyranids, chances are you are going to learn something on that journey. You're going to learn that maybe you should overbrush all the lighter colors first, then go in real tidy with the darks. You're going to learn that diluting that contrast paint makes for a better finished look without having to highlight over it again. You are going to learn something, even something as organic as thinning paints and blending. But what the consistency and regimenting of units does is kind of just stall and stop you from trying new things or like applying the things that you've learned. Because OCD aside, we do absolutely want a nice army to look consistent and finished on the tabletop, right? Right. But if you allow yourself to evolve through that army painting process and, you allow yourself and your models to be a little bit different as you move along, then I think that's kind of where one of the larger rewards is. And also it's one of the least obvious hurdles that I see people encounter and that talk to me about it. It's like, oh, I've painted 200 Imperial Guard and my painting's not getting any better. Well, I mean, the great thing about wargaming is that the models you paint are in war and therefore can be covered in shit. They can be inconsistent. They can have faded colors. They can have richer colors. And yeah, you might have trouble like spinning a narrative yarn around that. But if you do want to be a better painter, change and different kinds of stimulation are completely important. Another thing is that you might be leaning on starter techniques and starter equipment. Again, this is fine. A lot of us, maybe 75% of people watching this video, will have gone through the same initial route, myself included, in starting their hobby journey. And I'm not obviously shooting on anyone. That's how a lot of us started, and that's how I started. And yeah, those techniques I do still carry with me. But we often start with Citadel paints, Citadel brushes, and a Citadel methodology and mentality when it comes to painting our Warhammer, which is, it's a very carefully crafted system that has been around for over 30 years. It's designed to get you and your starter set and your miniature from unpainted to painted in the shortest amount of time possible with the least stress and with the best quality possible. Like, I know that's the holy trinity of things, and it doesn't actually ever work that way. Like, quick, good, and painless is not You can never have all three. But it is a solid system that works. But I think if you rigidly and strictly adhere to it, and wonder why your painting hasn't jumped to another level, the artificial ceiling that has been created there is possibly one of the things to look at. I know that people say that tools don't always affect the final product, but yeah, a lot of people say that when it comes to paint and painting. No one says that when it comes to fine machining tools or jigsaws or things that are dangerous and can kill you. No one says that about space shuttles. But yeah, try branching out a little bit. And I'm not just saying it to say buy more things. It's to try new things organically and gently in the workflow. Like if you're wondering why your colors might look a bit dull and flat, well, get 3 red paints from Vallejo instead and see how that works, or Pro Acryl, something like that. If you're finding it hard to get fine lines and detail, maybe try moving from a 12 quid Citadel brush to a Rosemary & Co. Series 33. Seriously, the Rosemary & Co. 33, I'm pretty sure I paid 4 quid for that brush. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Once. Twice, actually. Yeah, Citadel paints are good, and they've quietly redeveloped a lot of their formulas so that they've gotten really, really good over the last few years. But learning how different paints behave and respond is, I think, very important to growth and development and figuring out how all of this stuff works. So I moved away from Citadel a few years ago, and mostly just to try new things. Vallejo, Tooth and Coats, Pro Acryl, even Army Painter to a degree. And then when I came back to Citadel for a starter paint project, I felt like not only had the paint improved somewhat, but I'd improved in my ability to use them. So yeah, it's just another personal development and growth thing. All of this shit is just about learning more shit, essentially. And lastly, do the ideas you tell yourself that you are going to do. I was having this discussion with Elston from Elstonation recently, so I'm not going to go into massive detail about it because we did do a whole podcast episode about this. But hobbyists like ourselves are very good at overselling ourselves on ideas. Not to justify a purchase, but to kind of to make a purchase. But it's about managing expectations for the projects that you have in mind. But on the flip side, just absolutely do that idea there and then. It's very easy to say that you want to have dragon swooping down and biting a guy's head off midair, and the whole thing is just in a ruined rubble landscape, and the skeletons. There's lots of skeletons. And then everything you just spent 100 quid on models or whatever just goes on a shelf, and you think, yeah, I'll do that in a bit. And in the meantime, I'm going to go paint these 200 Imperial Guard. I think what a lot of people have issue with is that overselling to oneself and then not kind of doing it, and then the project becomes less shiny. The thought of it becomes less shiny because the dopamine's gone. But again, we're going to talk about this in the upcoming podcast, which maybe, given the amount of work we've got on here at the minute, that might be a little while. But yeah, when you have heat and you have energy and you have inspiration for a project, get it done. Just maybe not finished, just have a swing at it there. Because learning when you're inspired is just so much easier. And comes more naturally, and you're more receptive to it. And you could do things by accident when you're out of your comfort zone as well. You think, oh, that works. I'm going to bank that. That's good. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my wonderful Patreon community. This topic of discussion has kind of come from some of the organic conversations you guys have been having. You didn't know I was watching, but I was watching. And hopefully some of you guys in the community found this video useful. And like with all my talking head topic video things, this is it's an open format for discussion rather than just me telling you shit, because I don't really know that much. So feel free to have a discussion in the comments down below, discuss with each other, keep it civil-ish. And of course, if you do want to support MS Paints and more videos like this and more videos like that, which hasn't come out yet, and more videos like this, which probably will never come out, do consider joining the Patreon. because that is the best way to support Displace and keep some of the lights on. Until next time, cheers. I'm out of here.